Hello and welcome to our Fountain of Youth Masterclass. I'm Marvin Schneider.
And I'm Jen Ward.
Hi everyone, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to do a quick promo because we are going to be putting up a short version of this up on YouTube. And just to give you a bit of a sense as to what's going on here, this is a predominantly tapping event, SFT tapping event, but it's 100% directed towards igniting the perpetual fountain of youth. Jen's going to explain a lot of that in a second. And because it is so important and it is of interest to so many people, we are then going to make the recording available on our website. Jump onto genuinehealing.com, select the purchase button or the purchase menu, and you'll scroll down, find the Fountain of Youth Masterclass. That's how you can watch it and participate with us after the fact. We do have in the studio a whole bunch of people that are joining us in real time. Say hi. Thank you for joining us. It's always great to have people participating with us in real time. Jen, Fountain of Youth, what are we doing here?
Well, these taps that I've researched are inspired by the work of David Sinclair. Now, David Sinclair is he's a Harvard professor who studied the genetics. He's the individual responsible for understanding that there's something in wine called resveratrol that helps um, prompt youth. And also, he's done tons of work. I can't even articulate it, but what I did was I watched a lot of his podcasts and I researched taps for us to do. And the main thing to know is that the reason that we age is because the original master copy of the cells from the zygote, the original zygote that makes us, is pristine. But once we age and we don't have the right chemicals or whatever, we take shortcuts. The cells, when they divide, they use a copy of a copy. Now, anyone who knows records, the old records or the old CDs, is if you make too many copies of a CD and keep making copies from copies, it loses its original information. So what we're doing now is not only are we going back to that original zygote to use the original information that we had for that original cell to keep duplicating that fresh, new baby, healthy cell, we're releasing something that David Sinclair maybe hasn't taken into consideration is the past life trauma and engrams that are also stored in that DNA. Plus, we're doing something which is really cool, is we're upgrading the DNA from a 2-strand to a 12-strand DNA.
Hmm.
Now, there's a lot of information there to understand why that's important, but do you want to say anything about why the 12-strand is important, Marvin?
Um, well, I'm not a geneticist, and so the science of all of this is way beyond my understanding and comprehension. But what I have known right from the beginning of my, let's call it sort of spiritual journey and understanding, is the idea that the human two-stranded DNA is a very limited version of what is the natural order of things, which is a 12-stranded DNA. And my understanding of these things in a metaphysical sense is that life in a corporeal form always was intended to have 12-stranded DNA, but through some mechanism which I've not fully understood, we ended up with a two-stranded DNA. And so, what we are doing here today in energy is to restore our genetic makeup back to its original intent, which is our birthright, in fact, to have the 12-stranded DNA. And the other thing that strikes me, Jen, and I'm going to ask you to talk about this a little bit, is the idea. Well, let's put it this way. A lot of people will be familiar with the idea of DNA as being the base coding, the base genetic coding. But what you've also introduced into this conversation, I'm going to see if you can elaborate a little bit further, is the idea that within that DNA, not only does it store the genetic coding, which is really important for cell reproduction, but it also stores, well, the full library of the soul's journey.
Right. So, from what I understand, is when someone gets pregnant and they start the process of creating a new soul. The soul that is going to incarnate in there, um, what they do is like energetically, the DNA of the past life, the engrams that I see and read, the experiences, are then fed into the DNA of that fetus, right? So it becomes an integral part of the whole process. It doesn't start out that way. It's not there at the first conception, but it's fused in there once the soul is there. And lots of times the soul is already ready. Like lots of times there's a soul on the other side waiting to incarnate into a particular body. And so that makes it a lot easier. But lots of times, you know, this whole thing about, people meant to be, lots of times people get pregnant and they don't know if they want to keep it. They don't know. So maybe there's not a total soul out there needing the experiences of being with them. So it's almost like these souls are shopping for a body to be in. So then the information is fed into the DNA. It's kind of like woven in there. What I find interesting is that there's so many people on the planet, and some of us we feel an energy, we just feel it. My sense is I've been working with the intention of weaving 12-stranded DNA into all of humanity for the last 15 or so years. So as I sit there and I crochet, in my mind, I am working with individuals to upgrade the DNA, spontaneously upgrade the DNA of everyone. Now, a lot of us who are above the politics, above the hate, above the fighting, we can't understand, why don't people get it? And it might be simply that their DNA is a 2-strand DNA, which is barely capable of holding the self here as a human. So that would be the answer to why don't some people get it, and why do some people have more understanding and feeling and energy.
I like the visualization and the metaphor of knitting, and then in the process of doing that, restranding the 12-stranded DNA. And that's actually a visualization that anyone can use. And the interesting thing is that you've been visualizing this for, well, decades in re-knitting
Yeah.
the DNA of the broader collective, which is a lot of knitting to be done, to be honest.
So may I suggest, it's a great visual to use, but if you are going to use that, before you reknit in, the masses DNA, go through with a vacuum cleaner. You don't want to reknit and complicate their DNA if they have a deviant in there, if they're hateful, or if they're like have a lot of issues or diseases in their DNA. You have to vacuum out that DNA. Imagine a spine as imagine a human spine on a rug, and just run the vacuum over it and get all the dust out of it. And that will be a visual for pulling out all the genetic issues out of that. I mean, and that might be obsolete because the work we're doing here isn't just for those who signed up. We are surrogates for the upgrade to humanity. So as we do these tasks intentionally for ourselves, we're also upgrading humanity and putting that possibility out there for others. So we might see the diseases become obsolete. People look younger. People become more aware. People letting go of their vision issues, their weight issues, their all these genetic diseases or aging diseases. And it might come through a subtle way, like, oh, doctors have invented a way to like heal eyesight for everyone. Doctors have healed cancer. Sure, it will come that way as well because it has to be believable to the humans. And a lot of humans won't be able to like absorb that this can just spontaneously happen. So they'll have to rely on scientists and professionals to help them with that understanding that they don't need to age anymore.
Right. So, in a lot of ways, what we're doing here is laying the foundation for others to pick up the mantle, if you like. And yes, a lot of people will only, believe and benefit from it when a scientist then picks it up and sort of cracks the code, so to speak. But a lot of the work that we're doing here is creating those foundations. I wanted to talk a little bit about so the SFT tapping that we're going to be doing, which is kind of really the base of this masterclass, is um, doing things in energy, but at a cellular level. And so some people that are out there might think about that as being just, way too left field and not
Mm.
quite believable.
Right.
So just I'm going to get you to respond to that in a second. But one of the ways that I respond to it is there is a lot of, well, there are a lot of naysayers out there that just think that, you know, an intention can alter the energetic sort of display, right? But then the thing is that what's the alternative, right? So you don't have to fully believe it. Just do the work and see what happens. And so, what's lost in investing an hour and a half, 2 hours to do the tap? You don't need to fully understand what's going on. Just do it and allow yourself to be pleasantly surprised.